Srimad Bhagavatam, translated with commentaries by His Divine Grace, A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada. Canto 1, Chapter 4, The Appearance of Narada. Text 26. O twice-born Brahmins! Still, his mind was not satisfied, although he engaged himself in working for the total welfare of all people. Purport. Sri Vyasadeva was not satisfied with himself, although he prepared literatures of Vedic value for the all-round welfare of the general mass of people. It was expected that he would be satisfied by all such activities, but ultimately he was not satisfied. Text 27. Thus, the sage, being dissatisfied at heart, at once began to reflect, because he knew the essence of religion, and he said within himself, Purport. The sage began to search out the cause of not being satisfied at heart. Perfection is never attained until one is satisfied at heart. This satisfaction of heart has to be searched out beyond matter. Text 28 and 29. I have, under strict disciplinary vows, unpretentiously worshipped the Vedas, the spiritual master, and the altar of sacrifice. I have also abided by the rulings and have shown the import of disciplic succession through the explanation of Mahabharata, by which even women, Sudras, and others, friends of the twice-born, can see the path of religion. Purport. No one can understand the import of the Vedas without having undergone a strict disciplinary vow and disciplic succession. The Vedas, spiritual masters, and sacrificial fire must be worshipped by the desiring candidate. All these intricacies of Vedic knowledge are systematically presented in the Mahabharata for the understanding of the women class, laborer class, and the unqualified members of Brahmin, Kshatriya, and Vaishya families. In this age, the Mahabharata is more essential than the original Vedas. Text 30. I am feeling incomplete, though I myself am fully equipped with everything required by the Vedas. Purport. Undoubtedly, Srila Vyasadeva was complete in all the details of Vedic achievements. Purification of the living being submerged in matter is made possible by the prescribed activities in the Vedas, but the ultimate achievement is different. Unless it is attained, the living being, even though fully equipped, cannot be situated in the transcendentally normal stage. Srila Vyasadeva appeared to have lost the clue and therefore felt dissatisfaction. Text 31. This may be because I did not specifically point out the devotional service of the Lord, which is dear both to perfect beings and the infallible Lord. Purport. The dissatisfaction which was being felt by Sri Vyasadeva is expressed herein in his own words. This was felt for the normal condition of the living being in the devotional service of the Lord. Unless one is fixed in the normal condition of service, neither the Lord nor the living being can become fully satisfied. This defect was felt by him when Narada Muni, his spiritual master, reached him. It is described as follows. Text 32. As mentioned before, Narada reached the cottage of Krishna Dvapayan Vyas on the banks of the Saraswati, just as he was regretting his defects. Purport. The vacuum felt by Vyasadeva was not due to his lack of knowledge. Bhagavad Dharma is purely devotional service of the Lord, to which the monist has no access. The monist is not counted amongst the Paramahamsas, the most perfect of the renounced order of life. Srimad Bhagavatam is full of narrations of the transcendental activities of the Personality of Godhead. Although Vyasadeva was an empowered divinity, he still felt dissatisfaction because in none of his works were the transcendental activities of the Lord properly explained. The inspiration was infused by Sri Krishna directly in the heart of Vyasadeva, and thus he felt the vacuum as explained above. It is definitely expressed herewith that without transcendental, loving service of the Lord, everything is void. But in the transcendental service of the Lord, everything is tangible without any separate attempt at fruitive work or empiric philosophical speculation. Text 23. At the auspicious arrival of Śrī Nārada, Sri Vyasadeva got up respectfully and worshipped him, giving him veneration equal to that given to Brahmaji, the creator. Purport. Vidi means Brahma, the first created living being. He is the original student, as well as professor, of the Vedas. He learned it from Sri Krishna and taught Narada first. So Narada is the second acharya in the line of spiritual disciplic succession. He is the representative of Brahma, and therefore he is respected exactly like Brahma, the father of the Vidis, regulations. Similarly, all other successive disciples in the chain are also equally respected as representatives of the original spiritual master. Thus end the Bhaktivedanta purports of the first canto, fourth chapter of Srimad Bhagavatam, entitled Appearance of Śrī Nārada. Chapter 5. Narada's instructions on Srimad Bhagavatam for Vyasadeva. Text 1. Sutta Goswami said, Thus the sage among the gods Narada, comfortably seated and apparently smiling, addressed the rishi amongst the Brahmins, Vedavyas. Purport. Narada was smiling because he well knew the great sage Vedavyas and the cause of his disappointment. As he will explain gradually, Vyasadeva's disappointment was due to the insufficiency in presenting the science of devotional service. Narada knew the defect, and it was confirmed by the position of Vyas. Text 2. Addressing Vyasadeva, the son of Parashara, Narada inquired, Are you satisfied by identifying with the body or the mind as objects of self-realization? Purport. This was a hint by Narada to Vyasadeva regarding the cause of his despondency. Vyasadeva, as the descendant of Parasara, a greatly powerful sage, had the privilege of having a great parentage, which should not have given Vyasadeva cause for despondency. Being a great son of a great father, he should not have identified the self with the body or the mind. Ordinary men, with a poor fund of knowledge, can identify the body as self or the mind as self. But Vyasadeva should not have done so. One cannot be cheerful by nature unless one is factually seated in self-realization, which is transcendental to the material body and mind. Text 3. Your inquiries were full, and your studies were also well fulfilled, and there is no doubt that you have prepared a great and wonderful work, the Mahabharata, which is full of all kinds of Vedic sequences elaborately explained. Purport. The despondency of Vyasadeva was certainly not due to his lack of sufficient knowledge, because as a student he had fully inquired about the Vedic literatures, as a result of which the Mahabharata is compiled with full explanation of the Vedas. Text 4. You have fully delineated the subject of impersonal Brahman as well as the knowledge derived therefrom. In spite of all this, why should you be despondent, thinking that you are undone, my dear Prabhu? Purport. The Vedanta Sutra, or Brahma Sutra compiled by Śrī Vyasadeva, is the full deliberation of the impersonal absolute feature, and it is accepted as the most exalted philosophical exposition in the world. It covers the subject of eternity, and the methods are scholarly, so there cannot be any doubt about the transcendental scholarship of Vyasadeva. So why should he lament? Text 5. Śrī Vyasadeva said, all you have said about me is perfectly correct. Despite all this, I am not pacified. I therefore question you about the root cause of my dissatisfaction, for you are a man of unlimited knowledge, due to your being the offspring of one Brahma, who is self-born, without mundane father and mother. Purport. In the material world, everyone is engrossed with the idea of identifying the body or the mind with the self. As such, all knowledge disseminated in the material world is related either with the body or with the mind, and that is the root cause of all despondencies. This is not always detected, even though one may be the greatest erudite scholar in materialistic knowledge. It is good, therefore, to approach a personality like Narada to solve the root cause of all despondencies. Why Narada should be approached is explained below. Text 6. My Lord, everything that is mysterious is known to you because you worship the Creator and the Destroyer of the material world and the maintainer of the spiritual world, the original Personality of Godhead, who is transcendental to the three modes of material nature. Purport. A person who is 100% engaged in the service of the Lord is the emblem of all knowledge. Such a devotee of the Lord, in full perfection of devotional service, is also perfect by the qualification of the Personality of Godhead. As such, the eightfold perfections of mystic power, Asta Siddhi, constitute very little of his godly opulence. A devotee like Narada can act wonderfully by his spiritual perfection, which every individual is trying to attain. Śrī Nārada is a 100% perfect living being, although not equal to the Personality of Godhead. Text 7. Like the sun, your goodness can travel everywhere in the three worlds, and like the air, you can penetrate the internal region of everyone. As such, you are as good as the all-pervasive Supersoul. Please, therefore, find out the deficiency in me, despite my being absorbed in transcendence under disciplinary regulations and vows. Purport. Transcendental realization, pious activities, worshiping the deities, charity, mercifulness, nonviolence, and studying the scriptures under strict disciplinary regulations are always helpful. Text 8. Śrī Nārada said, "You have not actually broadcast the sublime and spotless glories of the personality of Godhead. That philosophy which does not satisfy the transcendental senses of the Lord is considered worthless." Purport. The eternal relation of an individual soul with the Supreme Soul, Personality of Godhead, is constitutionally one of being the eternal servitor of the Eternal Master. The Lord has expanded himself as living beings in order to accept loving service from them, and this alone can satisfy both the Lord and the living beings. A scholar like Vyasadeva has completed so many expansions of the Vedic literatures, ending with the Vedanta philosophy, but none of them have been written directly glorifying the personality of Godhead. Dry philosophical speculations, even on the transcendental subject of the Absolute, have very little attraction without directly dealing with the glorification of the Lord. The personality of Godhead is the last word in transcendental realization. The Absolute, realized as impersonal Brahman, or localized Supersoul, Paramatma, is less productive of transcendental bliss than the Supreme Person realization of his glories. The compiler of Vedanta Darshana is Vyasadeva himself, yet he is troubled, although he is the author. So what sort of transcendental bliss can be derived by the readers and listeners of Vedanta, which is not explained directly by Vyasadeva the author? Herein arises the necessity of explaining Vedanta Sutra in the form of Srimad Bhagavatam by the self-same author. Text 9. Although, great sage, you have broadly described the four principles, beginning with religious performances, you have not described the glories of the Supreme Personality, Vasudeva. Purport. The prompt diagnosis of Śrī Nārada is at once declared. The root cause of the despondency of Vyasadeva was his deliberate avoidance of glorifying the Lord in his various editions of the Puranas. He has certainly, as a matter of course, given descriptions of the glories of the Lord, Sri Krishna, but not as many as given to religiosity, economic development, sense gratification, and salvation. These four items are by far inferior to the engagement in the devotional service of the Lord. Sri Vyasadeva, as the authorized scholar, knew very well this difference, and still, instead of giving more importance to the better type of engagement, namely the devotional service to the Lord, he had more or less improperly used his valuable time, and thus he was despondent. From this it is clearly indicated that no one can be pleased substantially without being engaged in the devotional service of the Lord. In the Bhagavad Gita, this fact is clearly mentioned. After liberation, which is the last item in the line of performing religiosity, etc., one is engaged in pure devotional service. This is called the stage of self-realization, or Brahmabhuta stage. After attainment of this Brahmabhuta stage, one is satisfied. But satisfaction is the beginning of transcendental bliss. One should progress by attaining neutrality and equality in the relative world. And passing this stage of equanimity, one is fixed up in the transcendental loving service of the Lord. This is the instruction of the Personality of Godhead in Bhagavad Gita. The conclusion is that in order to maintain the status quo of the Brahmabhuta stage, as also to increase the degree of transcendental realization, it is recommended by Narada to Vyasadeva that he, Vyasadeva, should now eagerly and repeatedly describe the path of devotional service. This would cure him from gross despondency.